Shop Wayfair's Black Friday in July, now through July 29th. Get up to 80% off everything home, plus flash deals you don't want to miss. Head to wayfair.com to start shopping our lowest prices of the summer.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
7 things you don't really need to know, but probably should. I'm Ciara Revan, and this is the Sunday 7.
On today's episode of the award-winning Sunday 7, we catch up on some pretty catastrophic climate events, pick through the aftermath of the Crowdstrike outage with Will Guyatt, meet a robot guide dog, and hear about the plans for an all-UK space mission. And remember, if you're enjoying this episode, we're here 7 days a week with the Smart 7. Everything you need to know in just 7 minutes. Please do like, follow, and share. Now, before we start today's episode, it was on this day in 1883, a gentleman pedalled a water tricycle across the English Channel for the first and possibly only time. It took him less than 8 hours to make the crossing from Dover to Calais and a distance of 20 miles. His water tricycle consisted of 2 paddle wheels and a smaller wheel behind, which acted as a rudder. The oddest thing about the invention, the gentleman was named Mr. Ferry. This summer has been pretty patchy weather-wise for the UK with no sign of a prolonged hot spell, but that's actually not a bad thing compared to the rest of Europe. Brutal heat waves across southern Europe have seen temperatures in excess of 40 degrees for prolonged periods, while the US and Canada are struggling with wildfires sparked by extreme heat. In fact, last Sunday set a global record for the hottest average temperature of 17.09 degrees, according to the EU's Copernicus Weather Tracking Service. Professor Deanna D'Alessandro, director of Sydney University's Net Zero Institute, explains how scientists calculate the increases in global temperature.
The number is calculated based on the difference from 12 months ago, so where we were 12 months ago to where we were today, and what they determined was that actually this is the largest change, the largest warming or the difference in 12 months in history. Really what this is showing us is that our Earth's global ecosystem is extremely complex, and in fact we're starting to see climatic changes that are far more extreme even than the modelling and the predictions is showing.
The extreme heat is having an impact in various ways, with Canada in particular struggling with wildfires sparked by extremely dry conditions in national parks. 2023 saw smoke from Canadian wildfires spread down America's coastline, and 2024 has seen another wave of dramatic mega fires, which have seen thousands of acres ablaze. News reports this week show the devastation that the town of Jasper in Western Canada's national park suffered, as up to 50% of the town in Alberta was destroyed by fast-moving flames. In the US, Oregon is struggling with a wave of fires too, as Holly Krake from the US Forest Service explains.
It looks like it's going to be another monster of a fire year here in the Pacific Northwest. The forest and grasslands behind me are tinder dry, and when you add 2,000 lightning strikes in 48 hours, it's bound to cause really hot, intense, and fast-moving wildfires.
The increasing global temperature, which has been accelerated by the El Nino phenomenon this year, is causing accelerated melting of Arctic and Antarctic ice, with scientists warning that we could be close to a global tipping point. Somewhat confusingly, the British Antarctic Survey is about to head to Greenland. Apparently, they survey both the Arctic and Antarctic, and marine geophysicist Dr. Kelly Hogan explains what they're hoping to discover.
The Kanglek cruise that we're about to go on to this summer on the Royal Research ship, the Sir David Attenborough, is a 6-week-long cruise to southeast Greenland, visiting Kangerlussuaq Glacier. The reason that we're going to study this particular glacier is because it drains about 5% of the ice sheet, and we're really interested in how warm ocean water gets in, travels up the fjord, and melts the ice there. The Greenland ice sheet is melting at an accelerating rate. It is melting about 5 times faster than it was in the 1990s. This is bringing a huge amount of fresh water or meltwater into the ocean around its coast. This is changing the ecosystems and all of the biology that lives there, and it's also affecting the oceanography of the area, and it may end up slowing down some of the big ocean currents that bring heat to the UK. So actually, for a UK population, Greenland is super relevant right now.
Who would have thought that one little update could cause absolute global chaos? We're 10 days on from the Crowdstrike IT outage that saw half the planet grind to a halt, and things still aren't back to normal in GP surgeries and in airports across the world. When we get the blue screen of death, there's only one man we can call, the Smart 7's tech guru and master of "Have you tried switching it off and on again?" Will Guyatt. So, Will, what's been happening since the Crowdstrike fiasco.
Over $10 billion has been wiped off the value of this cybersecurity firm as the world tries to get back to normal after what appears to have been the biggest computer outage ever. As hardworking IT engineers have needed to physically connect a keyboard and mouse to millions of Windows systems to fix the damage, it's certainly taken some time. And just before the weekend, Crowdstrike announced that around 97% of those systems taken down a week before were now active again. It's been a huge job getting some of these computers back online. We've seen systems and servers installed in remote locations or even bizarre places like in the ceiling space of an office, and this is going to take time to fix. Randomly, despite causing all this interruption and possibly even financial damage to most of the Western world, Crowdstrike attempted to make amends by sending its customers $10 Uber Eats vouchers earlier this week as a nod to these hard-working engineers. The shame was, the voucher even got flagged for fraud and was therefore made invalid. But quite what they thought a coffee or a few sloggy slices of pizza was going to do, who knows?
They're a pretty big player in cybersecurity, right? Didn't something similar happen to antivirus company McAfee back in 2012?
Well, Crowdstrike only has around 29,000 subscribers. Many of these are the biggest companies in the world, so they protect millions of devices worldwide. It's estimated they cover around 9 million computers running Microsoft Windows, and they also protect Apple Macs and Linux systems too. Unbelievably, George Kurtz, the boss of Crowdstrike, was in charge of the tech at another cybersecurity company called McAfee back in 2010, when something eerily similar happened. Millions of Windows XP systems got stuck in a continual loop of rebooting and crashing when McAfee had pushed out a Duff update. Like Crowdstrike, engineers had to go in and plug a keyboard and spend time with each affected computer. And if you don't know about the now deceased founder of McAfee, John McAfee, he's definitely worth a Google to find out more about his larger-than-life existence.
Is there anything that the IT world can do to prevent these kind of things, Will?
Absolutely. Well, for starters, updates like these should be thoroughly tested before release, and big tech companies like Microsoft shouldn't just give them such overriding permissions to essentially rewrite their entire operating system. Also, without getting too much on a rant, big tech companies need to do more to make the internet itself more stable. Essentially, it's been built by the three pigs, and all you need to do is just have one of them get swine flu for the whole thing to fall over. Now, there's even some suggestion now that state intervention might be the only way to put this back on track and make the internet and the software and systems we all rely on become more reliable.
How is your aura, Will? Have you been reading about aura points on TikTok? Is this the latest version of clout?
Back in the day, Clout told me I was a leading Twitter authority on clowns for absolutely no reason we could ever work out. But it would appear that Aura is no different in its accuracy, as this one's being dished out by TikTokers. The idea of getting awarded points or losing them for the things you do in your life first became an internet meme in 2018, but it's really taken off this year, and TikTok users are now even asking their followers to decide how many Aura points they deserve for key moments in their lives. Some are now so worried this is an obsession for a small corner of the internet, it's going to force people to share only the cool online version of themselves, leaving no room for authenticity. And the idea of people prioritising how they are seen by others compared to how they actually feel really grinds my gears. Now, I wonder how many Aura points I'm going to lose for dissing Aura points.
We've all been busy worrying about AI, but it turns out maybe we should worry about AI itself. Tell me more about model collapse and what it might mean.
There's actual real science behind the definition of model collapse that a group of experts have been working on, but the simple version is that AI models run the risk of going very wrong if they start consuming all the AI-generated content that's now being proliferated online. You might call this dumbing down, or you might call it AI essentially eating its own tail. It sees a load of dull, woolly text outputted by the current AI systems, and the new systems start favouring this and will degrade it even further until it's producing actual rubbish. These experts suggest the proliferation of waffle from AI models on the web will also make it much harder to train the future generations of AI too.
Time to go back to the pen and paper?
Well, perhaps, but I've also lost my pen under this cache hidden under my mattress.
Still to come this Sunday 7, new drugs bring new hope, and there's some mixed news on the UK's water pollution problem. One of the most culturally impactful drugs developed in recent years is the category known as semaglutides. They're better known for their brand names, with Ozempic and Wegovy, two of the most prominent brands. These drugs were originally developed back in 2017 and intended to help those with diabetes manage their condition. But once the remarkable weight loss properties of the drugs became apparent, there was an explosion in demand from them and they've become a cultural phenomenon. But it's still very early days for these drugs, and while development is continuing with pill versions on the way, there are also concerns about what the long-term impact of them might be. Dr. Phillippa Kaye explains that there's a risk that those using the drugs lose not just fat but also muscle mass.
Ozempic has a huge role, but it's not Ozempic plus eat what you want and don't do any exercise. It always has to be medications and lifestyle. It's never either or. And for people who have obesity, which we have to remember has a huge genetic component, is having issues about people who eat quicker, they don't feel full as quickly, they don't stay as full as long, that these medications can be absolutely life-changing in terms of decreasing their risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, cancer. We can't rule them out. They're really important. It's just never either or.
The World Health Organization has also issued warnings that because of the high demand for drugs like Ozempic, there are a flood of fake and counterfeit versions coming on the market, which have been found in the US, Brazil and the UK. Weight loss specialist Dr. Sue Decotiis says that the demand is so high for the drugs, it's not surprising that people are taking advantage of shortages in supply.
The shortages have probably encouraged some of these companies that are not legitimate to make counterfeit Ozempic, which is semaglutide, counterfeit Mounjaro, which is Wegovy, which is Zepbound. And this is very scary because some of these counterfeit drugs actually make their way into legitimate commercial pharmacies. So that's what's really scary. And what can be in this counterfeit medication? There may be nothing in it, or there could be less than the drug that someone should take, or too much drug, or no drug at all. But what for me is really scary is they have found insulin in some of these injections. Somebody can die from an overdose of insulin.
The semaglutides are not the only wonder drugs making headlines either, with new drugs to tackle dementia and another which has been used to tackle fertility issues for women. The fertility drug is called rapamycin, and it was originally used as an immunosuppressant for those with cancer or for organ transplant recipients. But now research suggests it could have positive impact for women on both fertility and even ageing. Dr. Larisa Corda is one of the UK's leading fertility experts, and she explained how the drug works on This Morning.
Scientists are looking at some of the anti-aging effects of this drug, and they've been studying this in animal models. Now we're moving it into humans, and we're looking in particular at the ovaries. And what this drug is showing is that it might potentially be able to stabilise the rate at which these egg numbers decline, help to preserve the eggs, and also act on a specific molecule called mTOR, which is really critical when it comes to inhibiting the process or slowing down the process of aging. We've got to remember not to outsource all of this, because there's a lot of stuff that we can actually do ourselves to have a similar effect on this molecule called mTOR and an important enzyme called telomerase, which also helps to preserve the DNA. And that's all the things we always talk about, like improving nutrition, diet, exercise, reducing the amount of stress that we're exposed to, managing that stress. All of these things have been shown to reduce the actual rate of aging.
A new report from the Environment Agency painted a grim picture of the UK's water system. Spills of untreated sewage doubled between 2022 and 2023, with a record 3.6 million hours of sewage spilling into the UK's waterways. That was made up of an incredible 464,000 separate incidents. The report points the finger at four main water companies who it says are responsible for 90% of the spills, and they are Anglian Water, Southern Water, Yorkshire Water and Thames Water. The new Labour government is painfully aware of the issues at Thames Water in particular, who breached their licence this week, with a significant portion of the debt was downgraded to junk status by debt agency Moody's. The company has debts of over £15 million, and it's quite likely that it will have to be nationalised in the next few weeks. Alan Lovell is the boss of the Environment Agency, and he says it's going to take a considerable length of time to clean up our waterways.
We have underinvested in this industry, really since Victorian times, but particularly over the last 20 or 30 years. There has been too much emphasis on water company bills as opposed to investment. And it really shows in these results. It takes a while, and so realistically, we're going to see a big increase in investment in the next 5 years. That's great. But to get it to where we'd really like it to be, I think we have to envisage that it's going to be 15 or 20 years.
Still to come on the Sunday 7, we hear about plans for an all-UK space mission, and could robots replace guide dogs?
Right after this.
A milestone moment creates a beautiful memory for years to come. And now's the time to celebrate it with 35% off select pieces at Blue Nile. Blue Nile makes your most valuable moments sparkle with jewelry gifts of the highest quality offered at the best price. You'll also find expert guidance and the level of convenience you'd expect from the world's leading online jeweler. Right now, take advantage of 35% off select pieces at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com. BlueNile.com.
Welcome back.
Between AI and robots, it can seem like there won't be much left for humans to do in a few years, and it now looks like dogs might be facing the same issue. Scientists at the University of Applied Science in Hamburg have been busy developing a robotic replacement for the humble guide dog. It's estimated that there are about 4,000 working guide dogs for the blind in the UK, and it can cost about £10,000 to train a dog who can only work for probably 10 years. The potential replacement isn't one of those scary-looking Boston Dynamic type robot dogs, though. It's more like a wheeled walker, which assists the visually impaired user by detecting issues and obstacles up ahead. Susanne Aatz has volunteered to test the new device, which is a small engine and uses GPS to navigate, but she's not convinced it would ever replace her faithful black lab, Malta.
Malta is like my left leg, and without my left leg I don't even get out. I go everywhere with my dog. This device would feel like a step back for me and my personal mobility at the moment. But given the speed of scientific progress, I assume that AI will outperform a dog in 10 years' time at the latest.
The Germans aren't the only ones working on a robot dog replacement, with scientists at Binghamton University in New York State also working on an alternative. Their version does look more like the robot dogs from Boston Dynamics, but Zhang, who is an associate professor at the Department of Computer Science, says the robot will learn faster and be more adaptable for its human user.
After the guide dogs graduate from training center, it takes about 2 weeks for the human user, visually impaired people, to work with the guide dogs as a co-training process before the visually impaired person can independently use a guide dog. So as a robotics researcher, we hope to reduce this 2 weeks of training time to maybe a couple of days because robots can actively adapt to human preferences and human walking styles. So this is a new topic. This is a new area. We are pretty hopeful about shortening this time to maybe a couple of days.
This week saw the Farnborough Air Show and an announcement about future plans from the UK Space Agency. Space exploration is having a bit of a moment right now, with commercial operators getting involved, and NASA busy with its Artemis project, which will see moon landings as part of the plan to get mankind to Mars. It's not been totally without issues, as the Boeing Starliner astronauts remain on board the space station after a series of technical issues have delayed their return to Earth in what was supposed to be a next generation space shuttle. It's not just the US that's focused on space, though, with India, China and Japan all launching missions and moon landings. Now, the UK Space Agency has announced its own new plan for an all-British crewed space mission. Astronaut Tim Peake has been named as strategic advisor for the mission, which has been backed by US commercial space operator Axiom Space. He says it's a great chance to develop skills and inspire a new generation of UK astronauts.
It's a fantastic opportunity for the UK, very exciting to be able to have an all-UK mission with a science package. The call for the science has already went out early this year, and the UK Space Agency have had tremendous response from that. A great educational outreach package as well. So for the whole UK science industry, and also as an inspiration for our younger generations, this mission is fantastic. The point of this is that it's the future of the space economy. As the space agencies, such as NASA, ESA, UK Space Agency, part of that, we look further afield on the Artemis programme, exploring the moon, potentially Mars and beyond. Commercialisation of low Earth orbit is already happening. So we're just capitalising on that and gaining interest from these companies.
In a world of increasingly grim headlines about climate change and the risk of vulnerable animal populations, there was good news for an animal that's been on the endangered list for quite some time. The black marsh turtle is a native of Southeast Asia. It's a small freshwater reptile that's seen as sacred in Southeast Asian Buddhist temples. Now, conservationists in Cambodia are celebrating the successful breeding of the first black marsh turtle in captivity after its parents were rescued from the black market. Christel Griffioen is the country director for the Angkor Centre for Conservation of Biodiversity, and she says it's a significant moment for Cambodia.
The main threats that most wildlife is facing here in Cambodia and in the region too are related to habitat loss and the illegal wildlife trade. And in habitat loss you can think of deforestation, land conversions for agriculture, but also a construction of the hydro dams, for example. The future plans for this black marsh turtle is that it will stay at ACCB for the coming years, where it will grow and develop into a healthy turtle that reaches a size that it's less vulnerable to natural predators. Once we get there, and it might take 4 to 6 years, we will then look at bringing this animal back to the wild, and we can learn from how it will adapt to being back in nature and learn more about the ecology of the species and our plans for long-term reintroduction and recovering of the species in Cambodia.
This has been the Sunday 7. Wherever you're listening, do us a favour and hit the follow button. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. with the regular Smart 7. Have a great rest of your weekend. Written, produced and published by Daft Doris.
We all have our own ways of getting business done. Are you an early bird powering through emails before the sun rises? Or perhaps a night owl, strategizing and planning long after the office lights dim? However you run things, Atlantic Union Bank can keep up. No matter your business size or industry, you deserve a banker committed to your success. Call, visit us online, or drop by an Atlantic Union Bank branch to learn more. Atlantic Union Bank. Any way you bank.